Farm workers lacked a lot of federal protections that other workers had, such as they didn't have a minimum wage, right? So they could be paid very low prices. Minimum wage laws did not apply to farm workers. They didn't have a maximum amount of hours that they could work, meaning that they could be forced to work longer than a regular workday. And they didn't have any workers' compensation, right? And so these are some of the issues that farm workers were dealing with. And so you're going to see organization take place among them. An example would be the National Farm Labor Union. Okay, this was a union that was organized partially by a man named Ernesto Galarza. Galarza would play a prominent role in the union, and he helped to organize a number of strikes, such as the strike against the DiGiorgio Fruit Company. And so this strike ultimately wasn't successful, partially because of the role of undocumented workers. And what was that role? Well, basically, you have the DiGiorgio company hiring a number of undocumented workers to replace the workers that were on strike, right? Members of the National Farm Labor Union. But the National Farm Labor Union did not take this sitting down. They actually would go out and have citizens' arrests of some of these undocumented workers to try to stop them from taking their jobs, right? Ultimately, you would see the National Farm Labor Union losing in that particular strike. But Galarza didn't stop there. He went on to organize other strikes, and he also worked to try to repeal Public Law 78, which renewed the Bracero program, right? Remember, the Bracero program faced opposition from Mexican American farm workers because the Braceros were taking their jobs, all right? And that was contract labor, a little bit different than the undocumented workers, okay? Another example of laborers fighting for their rights during this time period, in the post-war period, is the Salt of the Earth strike, okay? This was a strike that took place in New Mexico, and it was a strike against a mining company by the name of Empire Zinc. Okay, the Empire Zinc Company, basically you have workers who were fighting for equal pay, right? Mexican Americans wanted to get the same pay rate that Anglo Americans were receiving from the Empire Zinc Company. They were also fighting for paid lunches because their lunches were taken underground, right? Like in the mine underground. And so they wanted to be paid during their lunches since they were still underground during that time. And they were also fighting for paid holidays. Now, the union that was behind this strike was known as Mine Mill. Mine Mill had a reputation for being radical and also had affiliations with the Communist Party. For this reason, Mine Mill was kicked out of the Congress of Industrial Workers, the CIO. And so Mine Mill still trudged on, though, and still supported this strike, even though they weren't members of CIO anymore. Okay, so you had a number of miners who were picketing and trying to stop strikebreakers from entering and taking their jobs, and this went on for a long period of time. Eventually, the courts ruled against the miners and ruled that they had to stop picketing, and at this time, their wives, Mexican-American women, stepped in and started picketing for them. Okay, so they played an important role in this strike, right, the Salt of the Earth strike. When the women got involved, they began to call for better living conditions as well. Remember, a number of miners, they usually live in these mining camps that are nearby the location, and in the mining camps, it was not very good living conditions. Basically, they didn't have running water, the plumbing was an issue, and so women were calling for better living conditions as well, right, as they start to picket and take the place of their husbands because their husbands can't legally picket anymore. Okay, and so women were involved in picketing, they were raising funds, they were giving speeches, and they were basically supporting the strike. But local law enforcement came in on the side of the Empire Zinc Company and began to harass the women. They were arrested at times. The security forces that worked for the company also harassed women who were picketing, but the women kept going strong even though they were facing all this harassment. Okay, there was a film made about this strike called The Salt of the Earth, and this film tried to document and this film was documenting the strike and the issues of the strike and trying to bring about national attention. This was a Hollywood-made film. But the individuals who were involved in making the film ended up getting blackballed by Hollywood, and so that became more of the issue of the film, what was happening to the people who were trying to make the film and not so much the strike, okay? The ultimate outcome of the strike was that the workers were eventually given higher wages, right? They didn't get paid lunches and holidays days, but they got higher wages to compensate for that. All right. They were also given an insurance plan as well as a pension plan. So they did have some benefits that were received during the Salt of the Earth strike. In